Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 348. 348. Uh, my name is Leonard Brackett. I'll be your temporary host. And our subject for tonight is going to be about Belizean treachery and our Independence Day. We just celebrated it yesterday, and we're all in a celebratory mood still. So for tonight, we're going to deal with a little bit more of our national issues in that regards. I'll go ahead and start our program as we normally do, which is with a short prayer, after which I'll do a short reading. I'll bow my head for a second. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth, and all that in them is, into thy hand we commend ourselves, thou who art the creator of the universe, thou knowest our hearts, our desires, even our most secret thoughts, loving Father. We pray that thou would accept the words of our mouth, the meditation of our mind, and the contriteness of our hearts. We pray that thou mayest bless our family members, each and every one of them. Thou knowest them by name and number. Thou knowest their hearts, their desires, and even their thoughts too, loving Father. We pray that thou mayest bless our country of Belize, its people and leadership. We pray that thou mayest bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well. And that thou would have mercy upon the rest of humanity and bless them also. For those who have need of food and clothes and shelter, may you provide for them as well. And Lord, for those who are being hurt and killed and maimed unjustifiably, may you have mercy upon their souls and help us to rid this world of all those evil issues. Please continue to bless this show. Give us the wisdom, the knowledge, the understanding, and the words to speak, even if we have to speak them as truth to power. Never depart from us, loving Father, for we ask these mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. I'll do a short reading here from, let me see what I'm going to find reading for tonight. Let me see, Ecclesiastes. Let's see. Let's read Ecclesiastes chapter 2, and I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, I said in my own heart, go to, now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore, only pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I said, of laughter is mad, and of mirth. What does it? I sought in my heart to give myself unto wine, that is to be a drunkard, of course, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what should do under the heavens all the days of thine life. And that is the reading for tonight. Thank you very much for allowing me to indulge in so doing. And for tonight's program, let me just get a little something here quickly. Let me see. Okay. I have what I need to read, but I also need to ask your indulgence in allowing me to set up the other part of our program so that other people who are listening to us on the other platforms can gain access. So I'll just ask you to bear with me for a second while I launch that part of the program before I get fully into the program itself. Let's see. There we go. All right. So, okay. Let's see. That's it. And let's put it this. Do some editing. Okay. Let's see. Belizean affairs. Okay. Belizean affairs and show. 348. So let's see. I'll be with you in a second. Just give me the opportunity to successfully launch this stuff here. Today is a Monday, 22nd September. Okay. And that should do. Let me see one more. Double exclamation, and that should take care of that. Okay, we got it. Save. That's that for right now. Thank you for indulging me, giving me the opportunity to kill a little bit of your time, at least so that we can grant the privilege of the other people to listen to what's coming next for the rest of the show. Okay. Uh, I wrote a short article, and basically it says the following comments were made by Leonard Brackett as part of a Facebook posting. Belize betrayal by Belizeans is the title that I gave that particular article. It's not a long article, it's about 2 paragraphs, and very short paragraph at that, they're not too long. But please take it in for what it's worth. Think about it. That it says some short things, are nicer than some long things. Sometimes you get a long dissertation with many paragraphs, and sometimes it gets tedious, tiring, and you know, overbearing for those who don't have span long attention span, they'll say. But for those who have short attention span, I hope that this one also will fit and you'll be able to enjoy it. Very short, so I won't delay or demur anymore. I'll just get into it. I call out the name of some individuals in the beginning, who among whom a discussion was being had on Facebook recently. One of the individuals was Mr. Norman Wesley. Another one was Bobcat. Another one was JC Arzu. Another person was Tony De La Fuente. Another individual was Mr. Mario Lara. G. Michael Reed. And John Arana, as well as Ironclad Partiality Lewis, Mr. Derek Dyer, Mr. Dirk Dyer, I'm sorry, not Derek, Mr. Dirk D-I-R-K, Dyer, Mr. Pulo Lightburn, well-known Belizean at that, etc. I made a request. Basically, I said, would you look up in a dictionary for the words subsume? And that was the end of that particular paragraph. Just the names of the individuals requesting that they would look up that particular word, one word, subsume. And I guess by that one word, some people might get a gist as to what that discussion was about or where I'm heading with the rest of this particular essay, which only have one more section, by the way. But I'll explain what I was intending by asking those individuals to please check up that word, because we were discussing and we were all over the place dealing with Belize and Belizean affairs as regards to our independence and our ability to be able to celebrate our independence and not have the Guatemalans them aggress us many times during the year and even on our Independence Day, as well as on our 10th of September and many others, like I said. I went on to say, this is what some of the Belizean leaders and fifth columnists, traitors, Trojan pro-Guatemalans, and apologists on Guatemala's behalf are forcing on our patrimony, Belize, with major altering demographic impact, a nation altering new identity wittingly or unwittingly. That is to say, we have some Belizeans who are very patriotic, very conscientious, who believe that, like we are saying in Creole, yada for we, Belize belongs to us. And I would say rightfully so is that belief. But then we also have some others among us, born Belizeans, by the way, not just people who have come from abroad and gotten Belizean nationality and citizenship. I'm talking about born Belizeans. And I'm not talking just about young people who haven't been educated in these matters or who don't know the details behind these issues. I'm talking about people who should know. Elitist persons in our society, people who are well educated, well spoken for, people who have a trajectory of having followers listen to them as individuals who are influencers in the society. So by any token or by any measure, you would say that these individuals should know better. And even if they choose to articulate or expound differently than their knowledge base, for whatever reason, whether is it that they're just trying to con somebody else while they know better, or maybe they just don't know better because on the particular points or subjects, they have not taken the necessary time to appraise themselves, but because they're influencers in our society, they take on the task of just bamboozling just about any and everybody who would give them a ear or who would listen to them. And unfortunately, what they do then is a disservice to our society, because while they may know better and they expound differently, they then misguide and mislead people who look upon them or look to them as credible individuals. As I said earlier, influencers in our society. And unfortunately, not everybody in our country are knowledgeable about these things. Some of them gain a little understanding or knowledge by hearsay. They don't read enough. And in some instances, even those who read enough are not necessarily exposed to the type of material that will allow them to have the level of gravitas to understand these matters and deal with these matters effectively. So, what I want to say then is that we have a lot of different levels of knowledge of individuals in our society, and that's a given. That goes in without my having to say it. That's just the reality of the circumstance. But the problem is that we as Belizeans find ourselves and our country in a peculiar set of circumstances. And I don't want to start with just the present state of affairs because it is critically important for us to be aware of, as much as possible, the information and the knowledge and the experience that got us where we are today. To discuss what we are dealing with today in a vacuum outside of the historical narratives that have been given to us or that we propagate among ourselves or that are actually true history rather than revisionist history. It is unfortunate that at this late time, we have people who are actually apologists on behalf of Guatemala, that while Guatemala as a country is laying claim to our territory and has put in their constitution that Belize belongs to them and they shall get it by reason or by force, and they keep being bellicose towards us and aggressing us on the Sarstoon River, on the Sarstoon Island, on the Caribbean shores, on the Petén border with Belize. And even in our one country, we have Guatemalans who are in our country who are militarily trained, retired military personnel who come and live in Belize among us and are enjoying the fruits of our patrimony. Even sometimes better than some of the poorer people in the country that can't even feed themselves. So then they're in our country being afforded privileges that even some of our own local born Belizeans are not being afforded, because it's not every Belizean that could go and ask for a piece of land. And it's not every Belizean that go and squat on other people's private property. That is not our nature. That is not our society. That is not our mindset. But these are the people who come, they come and they're very aggressive. They go and sit on people's land, and if you tell them, get out of my land, they want to fight you. Or they want to burn down the place. Or they want to tell you, okay, well, they are on the land and they occupy the land, and as a matter of fact, the land belongs to them because they're, even as foreigners or as Guatemalan, they claim Belize, so Belize is theirs as well. And they bring their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their uncle, their aunts, and all the rest of their family members. They fix up their little village, expand their village. Then they get title to the property because they go and they speak to the different political entities and offer to vote for them if they can facilitate them getting title to the lands, which happens more often than not. While the local Belizeans are there going through the process, putting in their request for piece of land, and their request is being piled up and it's never dealt with. There are many Belizeans who can tell you how many years or decades some of them have been waiting to follow the process, the procedures or protocols in order for them to justifiably get a piece of their patrimony, which they're entitled to. But I want to go back to the issue of not where we are right now. I want to go back to what I was saying earlier, which is people need to know how we got to where we are and why is it that we're dealing with the issues that we're currently dealing. So I'll go way back. And I'll say, once upon a time, I'm trying to be funny now, okay? So those of you who know that I'm not somebody who makes fun when I'm dealing with serious issues would realize that I am making fun right now, even while I'm about to deal with some serious issues. And the reason why is because most recently we've been dealing with a lot of issues, stressful issues, and every once in a while I need to be able to blow off a little steam in terms of relieving the stresses by having something to laugh at, something to bring joy, or to basically use as an escape valve. But let's deal with the subject matter as I said I was going to do. Long time ago, well, as long as 1492, there was a gentleman by the name of Christopher Columbus who wanted to help raise funds so that the Crusaders could have gone back to the Middle East and reconquer Jerusalem. Okay? So he wanted to help raise funds for that endeavor. So he went and proposed to. First, he went to the Portuguese and proposed to them that if they give him ships and the material means by which to make his voyage, whatever success he had, he was going to share with them. And he was a very good maritime captain back in those days, which is why he was able to go to these high, powerful individuals to make these kind of deals with them, because he had previously traveled up and down the coast of Africa, as well as England, France, and all those areas. In the northern part of okay, let me say it like this: in the southern part of the North Sea. I hope those who understand geography will, be able to plug those bits and pieces. The southern part of the North Sea is where North Atlantic I'm talking about, by the way. Please, the North Atlantic basically is a part of the where the most of the European countries they reside. For example, as I said earlier, Portugal, Spain, France, England, Germany, Sweden, and all the other rest of northern countries. Now, Columbus did not go all the way to the north part of the north. He went to the southern part of the north, which is to say France, Portugal, Spain, and then he had also traveled down in Africa area there, like Tunisia, all the way down to Mali. And so he was known to have been a successful captain. So he went and he tried to have a negotiation with the Portuguese elite, and they turned him down. Why? Because they had in those days, Portugal was a big, powerful maritime entity. They had much more wiser and experienced and competent captains at sea than was Columbus. So they brushed him off, and he decided to go instead to the king and queen of Spain at that time. Of course, let me go back a little bit more. Columbus was not from Spain, nor was he from Portugal. Okay. So while I introduced him, initially I did not mention where he was from. I just mentioned what he wanted to do. He was actually an Italian. Okay. That being said, I'm going to go back to the last part, the last point that I left off. That is to say, where he went to King Ferdinand of Spain and Queen Isabel. Okay. And they decided, okay, they listened to his proposal. They agreed that they was going to give him Gregory Morrison. Oh, I'm sorry. I have Mr. Morrison in the background. I just got see, I was doing to the gentleman the same thing I did the last time. I apologize to you again, Mr. Morrison.
Good
I was
evening, sir.
about, yeah, thank you very much, sir. I was doing a little bit of the same thing that I did the last time. I hope I didn't do it as long this time.
No,
No.
no, no. I just
Oh,
moments
okay,
ago got
okay,
on.
thank you. Yeah. I was prefacing part of what I was going to be dealing with tonight, which is to say how we get to the point of being able to celebrate of 44th Independence Day, as well as 220 something,
27, I think.
227 Battle of St. George's Key celebration. And I was covering the era in regards to how did Christopher Columbus end up coming to the Americas.
Mm-hmm.
I did mention that he was an Italian. He was a good maritime captain, had experience, and he went to the Portuguese to ask them for support for him to for them to give him boat and supplies to go and make a journey. And of course, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't mention what he initially told him his journey was about. That is, in those days, Europe
So,
was
India.
having problems going through the Middle East because of the Arab conquest,
Mm-hmm.
and there was the need to find a way to get to India and China to do mercantile trading.
Mm-hmm.
So now Columbus was intending, because he had experience, he had traveled as far down as Mali
Mm-hmm.
in the African continent on the Atlantic, and he had traveled as far up as Spain and France.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had quite a bit of experience traveling and guiding ships around the Mediterranean and those areas. So when he went and made that proposal to the initially to the Portuguese, they also had great maritime captains. Some
Mm-hmm.
of them were much more experienced and knowledgeable than
Mm-hmm.
Columbus. So they brushed him off. The Portuguese,
Mm-hmm.
they brushed him off when he made him try and make
Mm-hmm.
his proposals to them. So he went then, as I stipulated earlier, to the rest of the public who was here in the first part of the program.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going back over this for your benefit, hoping
No,
that
that's fine. I am familiar
yes,
with
sir.
the history.
Okay. And then he went after the Portuguese brushed him off. He went to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella
Mm-hmm.
of Spain.
Yes.
They listened to his proposals
Mm-hmm.
and they decided, okay, I mean, they can't win but for lose. I mean,
Yes.
they can't lose but for win because
Yeah.
even if
They
Columbus
had
is
they
not
had they had
successful,
no stake at that time in the
yeah,
global
uh-huh,
conquest of stuff, right? So
right.
that.
So they agreed to give him the supplies, and they gave him the cheese ship, the Pinta, Maria, I don't know all I names right now. But anyhow, they gave him the three ships that he traveled on. But he had lied to them in his proposal. He did not make them privy of the fact that he had some friends in the Canary Islands with whom he was communicating with, who had given him information about travels to the west
Mm-hmm.
and maps and everything else. The person that he was dealing with was another maritime person, of substance.
Mm-hmm.
But he did not give Queen Isabel or King
Isabella.
Ferdinand uh, that particular information because he was telling them that he wanted to travel around the bottom of Africa go up around and come back over towards India. But then again, the next thing is that he had nothing to trade with or to trade with those people. So even that again was part of the basis for being able to deduct and find out that he didn't actually meant what he was telling the king and the queen. And so when
Well,
he
you have a different interpretation of
yes
it
yes
than what I've
yes
read.
yeah yeah, but wait, I don't want to we'll discuss it afterwards, right? I'm trying to set a narrative or a point.
Okay.
We'll discuss it, sir. I promise that because I just already alluding to what I'm stipulating is a different narrative than what you might understand, right? So I don't want to
Yes.
start debating before I
No, no, no.
get
It,
to the
yeah.
point.
Go ahead.
So thank you very much for allowing me to finish up the narrative. Okay, and by the way, this is a scholastic information to the masses of the population of the world who were all for hundreds of years now given and allowed to have this belief that Columbus discovered America. Okay, even the statement itself is a canard. But let me stop jump ahead too far. So he went to Ferdinand and they gave him the stuff. And when he came on the journey, when he got to a certain point on his journey, instead of keep going south towards the southern tail of Africa, he changed and decided to go westward. And not only just westward a little bit, he went westward almost 90 degrees. Okay? As a maritime person, as I explained that he was, and a very experienced captain, no captain would have done that kind of move, you know, without knowing that he's going to endanger himself or his crew. That he went out there with the hope of having success. But that success that he was looking for was something that was already in his mind and on his plan. When he realized that he was in the middle of the Atlantic and his people was looking to, um, they were complaining, they wanted to rebel against him, right?
Yeah.
He did not tell them what he was trying to do. He kept on, feeding them this idea that they will soon find their way. They will soon find their way. He
Mm-hmm.
assured them that because of his capacity and capability, that he was doing the right thing on all of their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
But he was experimenting on something that somebody else had already appraised him about, but that he had not known to be correct.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, as we all know or have been told as part of the history, because remember, this history is what you call wait. Oh man, okay. The idea inside the word, I was looking for a word just now, but I can't come up with it quickly. The idea is that he told a story to the king and the queen. He told a story to his troops, his tripulants, on the different things them, and he led them. And at one point, way into the journey, about three-quarter into the journey, he was getting desperate himself. That he thought that he would have hit land long before the time. And the reason why is that at that time when he was coming, there was no hurricane to help push him forward and forward enough to get where he was trying to get. He was navigating on his own skills, and as a result, it took a while longer to get to where he thought needed to get, and he himself was getting discouraged. But he refused to tell them what the real situation was. After they saw land, he was able to confide in them that the voyage that he had taken, because he had other captains along with him, okay, on the
Mm-hmm.
other two
Yeah.
ships.
Yeah.
They had other captains that were knowledgeable as well, who were concerned as well,
Yes.
but was he had total influence over the project, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
he had his way, basically, despite the queries and the questions that were being posed to him and the disappointment of the other tripulants and so on.
Mm-hmm.
He came to the Americas in 1492,
Mm-hmm.
found some what they call in those days black Caribs. Now you know the Caribs are from Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't come after Columbus, or they didn't come along with him. He found them here when he came.
Mm-hmm.
He also found the Tainos,
Mm-hmm.
and he found others, the Red Indians. He found others, black people down in Panama area there, because
Mm-hmm.
he had traveled. He made his trips. In the second trip, he came on the mainland, on the Central American mainland. On
Mm-hmm.
his first voyage, he didn't come on the mainland. He didn't get a chance to come on the mainland.
Yeah.
On
He
his
went to
second trip, he went to
Hispaniola.
Honduras. Huh?
He went to Hispaniola,
Uh-huh.
Haiti, and Santo
Yeah,
Domingo.
yeah. Uh-huh. And a few other islands. He went to a few other islands
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, the bottom line is that we are told that he came and he discovered these people who were there already. So he discovered for his mind and the minds of those who were ignorant of that fact when he took back that knowledge to them. And he had found, in his initial discovery, he found that these people had access to gold and other materials that he thought the Europeans could make use of. So when he went back and he reported to the Queen and the King, they provided him with additional support and more equipment with the idea that no, he's not only just going to come and discover something, he's going to come and conquer what he had initially discovered.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, the guy from Portugal had already made trips as well,
Mm-hmm.
and the Portuguese, the Portuguese um, uh, got involved with the Pope and the King and the Queen from Spain, who were also Catholics, devout Catholics, and they decided, okay, well, Columbus had already made arrangement or discussion with the Portuguese, and they wanted to have him not allowed only the Spaniards them to benefit. So the Pope wrote that the decree to give the southern part to the Portuguese and the northern part of that median line of discovery to the Spanish. And based on that theory, the Spanish was running around the northern part of Central America as well as uh, um, the southern part of um, North America.
All of North America and Central
Uh,
America.
uh, well, the Spanish did not come until long many years after to the real continental
Yeah.
uh, United States area and Canada.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was not part of the, those were from 900 AD. There was a gentleman by the name of Genseric the Red, who had came across the Atlantic, uh, traveled Greenland, traveled parts of Canada, and had came all the way down to as far as what's Florida, what we now know today as Florida. He had traveled
Mm-hmm.
all the way down there,
Yeah.
and he was part of what used to be then the Viking Empire.
Yes.
He was the king of the Viking Empire of that time. But I'm trying to stay with the Columbus part of it, okay? Because that's germane to what I'm trying to get at in terms of we Belizeans. How we end up in Belize is where I'm going with this narrative and this story and filling in the bits and pieces. Of course, not all of it, because to do a dissertation on the whole historical details, in terms of chronology and everything else, it will take a lot more time than we have on one particular 90-minute show. But after Columbus came and they got that agreement, the Pope, who according to the Roman Catholic religion is God's emissary on earth, and whatever he decrees is the law of the globe, of course, because the Roman Empire, the Pope was both Pope in those days. He was both Pope and Emperor. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because as of today date, while we're having this discussion, the Vatican still exists.
Well, the Vatican
Both,
exists. Rome still exists.
right, that's exactly where I was going with that particular thought. Rome does exist in both
yeah,
form, both
yeah.
as a
The
as,
state,
as a state, even though
yes,
it's very small now, and as the religious, you know, um, what can I say? Anyhow, basically the Pope is two powers in one.
yes,
Okay, a lot of people nowadays in our modern society don't recognize that reality as being such.
yeah,
That is
yeah.
that
He's head of state, and he's also the Pope in charge
right,
of
the religious.
1.5 billion Catholics,
Huh.
right?
Okay, so he made that agreement, and on the basis of that agreement, the Spaniards they start exploring Central America, exploring the Caribbean more, Central America a lot more, and even up to Florida,
Hmm.
where they met the Tainos again,
Hmm.
right? Which was basically what they call the tinted people, the black Indians,
Hmm.
all of whom were descendants from Africans who had traveled across the Atlantic aeons or many years before. No,
Hmm.
um, not the Mexican, the Spaniards after conquering Cuba, they came across to Yucatan. They conquered Yucatan, and then they went and conquered farther up into the Mexican Bay. And they went all the way, as we now know based on the history, that Hernan Cortez had gone all the way to Mexico City, which never used to name, was not, didn't have that same name, had a different name, but that was this essential and a massive empire of the day
Hmm.
with the Aztecs.
Yes.
And he conquered them and then sent people out along the Pacific coast to go down to Guatemala and the rest of Central America. And he also sent some people out on the Atlantic around the Yucatan to come to Honduras and Guatemala. But the Guatemalans they wanted to take control of of the place, not under Cortes. They wanted to have their own viceroy or their own kingdom or sub kingdom of Spain. But they didn't want to be controlled by the person that sent them. So Hernan Cortes came to discipline them. He went to Honduras and he went to Guatemala. He sent some troops through to Guatemala by Tepu, close by Petén Forest there, and he sent some troops by sea and came all the way around to Honduras. But many years after that, those people persisted in wanting to control their own destiny. So at the end of the story or the narrative is that they were successful to get Spain to award them a different jurisdiction than what Hernan Cortes had control over. That is, that they were able to control part of Mexico, part of Guatemala, not part of Guatemala, all of Guatemala at that time, uh, Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. That consisted of the Central American, what then eventually became a federation, which there's other parts of the story that I'm not going to get into because it's not germane to where I'm trying to get to, and time is running. I'm trying to get to Belize. Okay? So while the Spaniards had conquered Central America and Mexico, they had not conquered Belize, except that they went to Belize on one particular occasion when they took some of the Belizeans at that time, what we call Belizeans, because now the country is named Belize, but it used to be called the Bay of Honduras, which had Belize included as part of Honduras also, as well as all the Banaka and Rattan Islands and other islands, that were in the Caribbean area there, as well as even Jamaica and some parts of Honduras, um, what used to be called Trujillo, that eventually the Spanish they had conquered or taken away from the British. And then we also had the Black River settlements in Nicaragua and Honduras at the corner there, um, at the bump, right? And they had their one kingdom there before the British went there. Okay, the Mosquito people then had their one kingdom there, but they were fighting against the Spanish, and the Spanish couldn't conquer them because the Spanish, they were getting sick too often, and they couldn't live in that area there adequately enough, so they couldn't conquer those people. The way how they gained control of that area is that they exchanged. They asked the British to give up that area as part of the treaties that they were having after the Battle of the Saints, St. George's Key, St. Nitz, St. Lucia, St. Martin, all the different little islands that used to be called by the name of saints, right? Some of them belong to England, some belong to France, some belong to the Spaniards, others belong to the Portuguese, and others belong to the French, you know? And they were all fighting among each other. Why? Because they had found gold and silver, so a lot of it in Panama and parts of Colombia and parts of um, um, uh, um, Ecuador, Ecuador and Chile and other places. But all of that never, all that gold and silver and things used to come wrong into through like where the Panama Canal eventually got built, right? That was the narrowest part that had a way for them to go from one side to the other side of the isthmus. I think we all understand what an isthmus is, right? The narrowest part of where two body of water exist, and a narrow part of land that divides them, right? Which is what Central America is called or recognized to be. I'm saying all that because I'm trying to get to where, while the Spanish, they were trying to take out resources out of those areas, massive amount of gold and silver and other resources. We in Belize, the woodcutters in Belize at that time, before they became woodcutters, they were actually pirates. That was um, sucking sucking the ships that were transporting stuff for the Spanish and the other countries then in the Caribbean. Initially, they were just rogue pirates, but eventually they became sanctioned by Great Britain as well, right? For piece of the booty, like they would say. And then they gave them commission to work under the British powers because at that time Britain was a major maritime entity in the world. So once they gave permission to some of these British buccaneers and these Scottish buccaneers and others, they were free to roam and to sack any kind of vessels that they would find and steal the wealth that the Spaniards and the other French and others were stealing from the local indigenous people in the Americas. So it was like a free for all. Regardless, I see you disappear for a while. I'm going to keep on talking for a little bit, and hopefully you might get a chance to come back. I don't know if you had some electronic difficulties, but I'll just continue the narrative. So some of these same buccaneers and pirates, when the Spanish ships would chase after them to try and capture them or to take away back the resources that they had stolen, they would come into the Amatique Bay and the Belize Barrier Reef proper, where those big ships from the Spanish Armada couldn't chase after them, or the other big ships, the military ships, them, and they would abscond in places like St. George's Key, Ambergris Key, Belize, and the lower lying waters and shoals of Belize. And over the years, they settled there and became what was known as the Bay Colony, which included many of the same pirate people and some of the same British buccaneers, other buccaneers from Scotland and Wales and other places, other um, uh, people from Africa that were plowing the Atlantic at that time, later on. I still don't see Mr. Morrison as yet, so I'll try and make sure I keep an eye out, but I'll continue the process. And so we end up having Belize as not a colony yet at that time. It was just a settlement. And these people used to control that area proper, and they could not be invaded and or taken over. Eventually, what happened is that, like I said earlier, there was one particular time. Well, they tried quite a few times. The Mexican, the Spanish Armada in Mexico, Yucatan area, tried to come to Belize on a few occasions to dislodge the people that used to hang out there in that area, and they did not succeed until one particular instance. Instead of bringing all the equipment on the sea, they decided to come on land. And as a result, they caught the Bay people then off guard because they were always a maritime people, and they did not expect that the Spanish who came then on land would have caught them off guard, but they did. And then they took some of them with them to Yucatan and shipped some of them over the seas to Cuba. But they did not dislodge the whole population, because some of the people in the population in the Bay, as part of the Bay Colony, some of them went to Jamaica, some of them went to Ratan, some went to Vanaca, some went to Honduras at Trujillo. Others went to the Black River settlements, along with to join up back with the people of the Mesquite Kingdom. And then others went inland Belize towards Petén, to the point where at one point later on, there were settlements in the Petén area far beyond what we now call Melchor. There will be a people or Belize or British and US people all the way into those areas there. So when they came on the time of September 10th, and the British Honduras colony at that time, it was a colony. Well, wait, I'm jumping ahead. I can't reach the colony part yet. When they came at that time, we were more than a settlement, but we had not been declared a colony yet. Okay? Because the issue of how we became a colony needs to be understood, which is why I went all that far back. A lot of Belizean people say the British came to Belize and they conquered Belize, and that they brought slaves with them and they enslaved the people. All of that is a bit conflated, because people just don't understand, don't know, and have not learned all the bits and pieces. How Belize became a colony is because the same Belizean people that were there, as I mentioned earlier, requested the British, who sent troops from Jamaica and sent troops and people from the Black River settlements, to come to Belize to help Belize keep the Mexicans them from invading. And when the 10th of September clashes occur, the Belizean people were able to prevail, and the Spanish, they took off and never came back again to challenge. The Guatemalans could have done that if they really wanted to, or if they thought that they were capable of doing so. But if the Mexicans, if the Spaniards and Mexicans, they were unsuccessful in doing so, how the devil's Guatemala, back in those days at that time, being a little backatong or backwater settlement, would dare to step to the plate and try to confront the British? So it was many years after that Guatemala attempted to put together what was an armada under under a leader they had there by the name of Thomas uh, Thomas Matia de Galvez. Thomas Mateo de Galvez, they call it Generalissimo. Like how do you say that in English now? Like a maximum general, then one of those what you call um, uh, big man or power players, right? In the country and in the military. He put together some soldiers and some naval capabilities, but he didn't go to Belize to try and conquer Belize. He could have just as well tried that. What he did is he went to try and conquer Trujillo and to try and conquer the Banaka and return and to try and dislodge the people then from in Nicaragua there by Bluefields and the people then from the Black River Valley. And he was soundly beaten and sent back into Guatemala, which is why they have that naval base in Guatemala at the Lago, at the what the place call the place? Anyhow, where they have the submarine base close by Puerto Barrios, that is named after that same gentleman, that same general, Mateo Galvez, Tomas Mateo Galvez. Okay? So, never did Guatemala ever put a foot on Belizean territory in its history from way back then, even as of today date. They attempted to do so in the early 70s, and they were, advised not to undertake such endeavor because at the time then the British brought Harriers and they brought all kind of equipment and Kitty Hawk and a whole lot of other things. The British were prepared to defend Belize, and Guatemala could not stand up against the British. They eventually learned what the British was about. That is that Argentina, which is 10 times or more bigger than Guatemala, was disciplined by the British at the Falkland Island invasion, that the Argentinian wanted to invade the Falkland Island, which was a small territory of England. And they saw what happened to the Argentinians then. They were handed their head in a plate. So Guatemala, being that much smaller than Argentina, by all means recognized that it couldn't step out of line. And they were told by the Queen at that time that if they ever put one foot into Belizean territory, by the time they go back, they will not find their capital. But that didn't have to happen because at the same time, what happened? Divine providence came into play. And a volcano erupted in Guatemala City. And therefore, the Guatemalans and the Salvadorians who were coming to support them to invade Belize had to turn back to go and take care of their own, rescue all them people from the volcano eruption and the earthquake and everything that happened to them at that time. So now that Belize got its independence, and they were able to hoodwink the local Belizeans them into believing that, well, Belize can have its independence even without any defense guarantee, and we can survive in that neighborhood, when in fact we have a very close neighbor by the name of Guatemala, who is actually claiming Belize as being theirs, and they claim it to be theirs because they are saying that whatever belongs to Spain, they have a right to inherit after they declared themselves independent in 1821. In 1821, Spain had no control over Belize. Spain had already ceded Belize to the British at the Treaty of Versailles when they had their conference to figure out how they will resolve ceasing the war that was going on. Like I said, the war from the St. George's Key, St. Lucia, St. Dominique, St. Vincent, and all the other saints that, the general warfare that was going on between England, Spain, France, Portugal, and others. At the Treaty of Versailles, they made that agreement and told the British that the British could give up the Black Sea settlements and the people at Trujillo and the Guanaca Island and Guanaca Island, which then became property of Honduras, in exchange for Belize being able to consolidate all those people that was living in those other places in what at that time was then British Honduras. So England agreed to be the protectorate of British Honduras, and on that basis, Belize then became a British colony. In our country, nobody teaches these things and explains these things in school. There's no curriculum set up so that the younger generations and or any of our people can take up these things as a matter of scholastical effort and learn and know and teach among themselves or ourselves these historical facts or narratives. Because the less we know, the more of a defenseless papa we are. We're a small country of a little about 500,000 people. Guatemala has about 18 million, approximately. So they have 36 times we population. How the devils we would ever be able to fight against them or survive an invasion by them if we don't have help from somewhere else? Which is the reason why we decided to take our independence within the Commonwealth. Belize could not become a fully independent country without a defense guarantee and without having someone to back us up, because we don't have the population for an army to defend ourselves against our bellicose aggressors who are claiming us, the Guatemalans. And they're constantly aggressing us. All they're trying to do is get us into a situation where some kind of conflagration will happen and they will be able to say, well, we are to be blamed, which is why they had to invade and take us over. And we have people in our leadership of the country who are going along with changing our constitution and making it more pliable to the needs and wants of Guatemala. And yet they're telling the people, or bullcrapping the people and bamboozling the people into believing that, oh, they're trying to help the country become independent so that they could be the leaders of the country. To lead us where? They make no effort to teach the people what the people need to know so that the people can be able to defend themselves either with knowledge or by any other means necessary. Without knowledge, our country is weak. Our very one Belizean people have doubts as to, well, if Guatemala is claiming us and they have historical documents that says that they inherited us from Spain, when in fact, when Guatemala declared its independence from Spain in 1821, Spain refused to accept and acknowledge their independence. So for all intents and purposes, Spain had control and rights over Guatemala. But Spain had no control or rights over Belize even at that time, because Spain had already ceded Belize from the 1700s to Britain as a colony. Our people now don't teach our younger generation that type of knowledge. And Spain did not recognize Guatemala's independence declaration until 40 odd years, I think it's 42, 43 years after Guatemala declared its independence. In 1821, Spain recognized Guatemala's independence. I think it was 1863 or 64, somewhere around there. I don't recall the exact date. But it was 40-something years after. So how the devils would Guatemala claim to inherit something from Spain that Spain had no possession and control over? That on its face, is revisionist history and trying to lie to us Belizeans because they feel like we younger Belizeans don't know nothing about history and we are not as sophisticated as them, or we didn't exist back then. Guatemala did not exist as a country when Belize was already free. Belize was not a slave country back in those days. England did not conquer Belize and then brought slaves to Belize. The slaves that went to Belize came from Jamaica. They went there to work. Okay. In 1859, England, on behalf of Belize, entered into an agreement with Guatemala to establish permanent borders between Belize and Guatemala on the southern side of Belize and the western side of Belize. And as I told you earlier, at that time, before the border treaty was consummated, there were Belizeans all the way into Petén, as far almost as Petén, Flores, which is the capital of Petén district. There were Belizeans far past Melchor, past Benqueviejo, all the way past Melchor, and going all the way. There was a big bulge of Belizeans who were operating logging and chicle and many other industries in those areas. During that same time, there were Belizeans in the southern part of Belize, in Punta Gorda, as well as across the Sarstoon River into Guatemala, all the way as far as Livingston. And like I told you earlier, there were people even in part of Honduras on the coast. So for all intents and purposes, when that border treaty was agreed to, it was to the benefit of Guatemala, so that the people that was already all the way across the Sarsoon River, as far as Livingston, would have to have come back from Livingston and come back across the Sarsoon River based on that treaty, because they could not stay on that side anymore, because Guatemala wanted a treaty so it could consolidate its borders because of the filibusters who had conquered Nicaragua and was threatening to conquer other parts of Central America. So Guatemala was trying to gain the favor of the British to help them repel whatever possible invasion would come towards their territory. And those boundaries were in existence decades before that treaty was finalized. As a matter of fact, the treaty was laid over for a while. It was originally put together in 1859, and then they had a further consummation of exchange of notes, diplomatic notes, because at the time when the treaty was finalized, Guatemala was having a war with El Salvador, trying to conquer El Salvador. And prior to that, Guatemala was part of the Central American Confederation under the viceroy of Central America, which Guatemala at that time was leading. And they want to keep control of all those other Central American republics. And the other Central American republics rebelled. Right now, Guatemala has a part of Honduras that doesn't belong to it, Puerto Barrios, which is where they're using to ship out their bananas and other commodities, to do commerce. That territory was rented from Honduras for 100 years. And when the 100-year lease was up, Guatemala refused to return the land, which is part of the reason why they have such a big military. They have Air Force, they have Coast Guard on the Pacific, and I know attempting to expand on the Atlantic with the idea of trying to intimidate Belize into compliance and to let Belize acquiesce to have Guatemalans take control of part of Fui territory. and to hell with what the ICJ says, because as far as Guatemalans are concerned, they would hope that the ICJ rule on their behalf, but if the ICJ rules against them, they will just ignore it, and we, the Belizeans, or somebody on our behalf, will have to take back whatever territory Guatemala has taken away from us currently and is intending on trying to take away, because they are claiming half of our territory. In fact, a little over half of our territory. And they say that they'll get it by reason, which is what they're trying to do now at the Hague or the International Court, or they'll get it by force. And with our population of being 1/36 of what Guatemala population is, and with our economy being so small, and with nobody providing us any weapons for free, like how the United States provides Guatemala with weapons, and Israel provides Guatemala with weapons, all kind of modern, sophisticated weapons, how the hell Belize is ever going to stand up and fight against a bellicose, aggressive neighbor like that, who is hell-bent in taking our territory? And then we have our leaders pretending that they are more Guatemalans than the Guatemalans themselves, and believing that the Guatemalans will love our leaders more than they love themselves, or that the Guatemalans will love our Belizean people more than they love the Guatemalans. All the Guatemalans want is our territory. They want the oil under our territory. They want our gold. They want all the minerals and everything that goes with it. They're even threatening stupidness about, well, people that own private lands right now will have to sell their lands or come into some kind of agreement when they take it over, because they intend to take it over by reason or by force. And we have some Belizeans railing up with other Belizeans, because some Belizeans complain about what Guatemala has been doing for so many decades and continue to do. Some of our own born Belizean people are telling the other Belizeans, stop aggressing the Guatemala. I mean, stop tantalizing the Guatemala. Okay? Stop provoking them. How the hell are we, the Belizeans, going to be accused of provoking the Guatemalans when they are the ones intimidating and provoking our military personnel and our civilians, and forcing us to lose access to our own country so that they can keep control of it? And once they get control of it, they'll never give it back. And we have no means and ability to be able to take it back. I don't see Mr. Morrison in the background again, so I guess he must have some electronic problems. So I'll just continue with the show and continue verbalizing what this issue is. So you can't say Belizeans at home and abroad and or others that, at least as far as tonight teachable moment is concerned, you don't know how we Belizeans end up with Belize and have a right to have Belize claimed by us as our patrimony and our country, because I've just taken almost the whole of this particular program, 1 hour and 15 minutes of the whole 1 hour and 30 minutes program, to explain to you, prior to the days of Columbus and the days of Columbus, and after the days of Columbus, and up to today's date, with the issues of the Guatemala claim to anything that belonged to Spain is now being her property. And because at some point in the history, Spain was awarded Belize and the whole rest of the north part of the American continent by the Pope, who by any stretch of the imagination had no authority or right vested in him, legally, technically, militarily, and or religiously. Because God did not divine for the Pope to say that all people who are in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, were supposed to be subjugated. God had already said, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods or their property. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. And all these things according to the religion, they were supposed to have been doing in the name of God. That's blasphemy. By the way, you cannot break the commandments and do all these murderations and stealing and raping and pillaging and doing all this kind of stuff that has been done to the Americas by Europeans under the figment or the false premise that they're doing what God wanted them to do. Not the same God that I think that I ascribe to, at least. Maybe to some, maybe some other God they're talking about. Okay? And as far as I know and learn in the Bible, because I'm also a biblical student, expert in biblical matters as well as an expert in prophecies, there's no way that I would be convinced by anyone that the Pope had any authority or rights to order the colonizers to come to this Western Hemisphere and to colonize it and slaughter whoever doesn't want to abide by their decree in order for the colonizers to steal the wealth of this place and carry it back to Europe so that Europe could have had their golden era. That's contrary to biblical precepts and principles and biblical writings. That's the same kind of problem why Cain killed Abel, because of material goods. And you won't tell me that even from way back in the Cain days till now, or till the days when 2,000 plus years ago, when the Pope decided to make that decision, at that time, enough millennia or hundreds of years hadn't passed, so that the Pope at that time would have been more knowledgeable and aware of the fact that Cain killed Abel for sake of stealing one brother property, and he won't give such a decree. And we today in modern society, after these other few thousand years later, don't believe any kind of shenanigan to be ethically, morally, and fundamentally human-like. You cannot commit mass murder in God's name unless you're talking about some other God. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's good. You can't steal your neighbor's property. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill, especially if you want to kill for the sake of dispossess somebody of their property. But you see, to some of us Christians, Christianity and the dogmas and doctrines of Christianity are only good enough when it serves our ultimate objective of greediness, selfishness, and, no care how evil it is or how immoral it is all right to participate in the process so long as you're going to benefit from it. Out here with that. It's coming to the end of the program. We're at 1:18 right now, which is basically, we have like 12 more minutes, about 11 more minutes to go. So I'll stop rant and hope that whatever was presented tonight, we're not at the end yet. I have a little bit more to dish out. But that whatever was presented tonight takes you from Columbus days or previous to Columbus until today, current day, that we're at the ICJ. So let me deal with the ICJ issue with the rest of the 10 minutes that I have left, since we are at least up to date, apparently, or hopefully, in terms of history, chronology, morality, warfare, and everything else that I've discussed or spoken about or made mention earlier. Let's get to the ICJ issue. Belize should not have had to be at the ICJ. And we're only there because of the treachery of some of our own leaders. Most of the people in the country did not want to go to ICJ until some of them were convinced by their political operatives and leaders to join those leaders to lead them into that ICJ project. Why? Because the leaders apparently had convinced and were convincing the people that they were doing proper leadership, when in fact they were being treacherous and treasonous. They were committing not only just crime against our society and our country, but they were committing high crime by using high government power and the power of governance, which should accrue to the benefit and well-being of our people and country. They were using it and still are using it as of today date. We are having this conversation. The new leaders that we have in place right now are hobnobbing with the Guatemalans, betraying us, signing agreements with the Guatemalans that they don't tell us anything about, and we have to learn about those details through second-hand information or methods. And when we bring it to their attention, they try to deny it, when in fact, even after denying it, they turn around and pretend that, well, they're going to stall for a while and hope that it blows over like a little breeze. The level of treachery of our leaders. And if that is not enough, we have some of our own people, like I said earlier, in the earlier part of the presentation, who are aiding and abetting this conduct against us. That the leaders, in fact, let me be specific, because I think it was today or yesterday, I republished a couple of letters that I had sent the UDP-led government of Belize under Mr. Dean Oliver Barrow. I sent him about 3 different letters during his administration. I sent him other letters, but these 3 letters that I'm referring to were specifically in regards to the Belize-Guatemalan issue, because the purpose for which the UDP was instigated and created, I being the person who instigated the creation of that entity, thank God I'm still alive to speak to it without no hair on the tongue and without anybody being in a position to challenge anything that I have stipulated or said in those regards, because I was at the foundation before there was a foundation completed. Okay, and the purpose of the purpose for which the UDP was created was to be able to wrestle power, governance power, away from the PUP party that we mistrusted based on what we saw was happening during that time with the Belize-Guatemalan issue. That's the basis and the purpose for the creation of UDP, as well as to take away governance powers, to give the country a different type of governance, one in which the people would be a lot more free, in which the people would have their rights respected, and that everybody would have equal opportunity to survive, succeed, and help build the country and make the country a better place. Those are the preambles of the UDP. Those are the goals of the UDP. That is the basis for the creation and the basis on which the UDP stands. So those 3 letters I republished, like I said, 2 of them, I think it was just today or earlier today on the internet, for people to be able to see history, recent history, and the prediction of 2 of those letters, how prescient they were at the time when they were written, predicting exactly what we are currently living out in Belize. Okay, I republished them for public awareness. We didn't arrive where we are by accident, oversight, omission, or just negligence. We arrive where we are today as the basis of outright connivance, bamboozling, treachery, and treason on the part of our leaders and a lot of their followers, our own countrymen. And they will, I hope not, I was about to say that there will come a time when we will regret it, but I'm hoping that it doesn't turn out like that. Which is why I persist in staying engaged with this process. I could be sitting on watching TV or watching one ball game or playing my instrument, my saxophone. I could be or playing or doing some other stuff. There are a lot of things that I could be doing with my time. But this particular program for tonight, as a teachable moment, I relish in the privilege to be able to do so. I didn't have to do it because, as a matter of fact, I'm not able on this platform to reach the level and amount of people that this information could be relevant to or should be relevant to, and who can make use of it to help in the greater cause of protecting and preserving our country for our future generations. But I indulge in it anyhow for a small an amount of people in terms of our population, which is about 500,000, which is not a lot of people. But yet, a lot smaller amount of people gets the privilege to hear what I'm saying and probably derive the benefits of being able to check for themselves to see whether or not what I'm saying has any merits, validity, or truthfulness to it. But at the end of the day, ignorance, like they say, ignorance of the law does not exculpate you from you having violated the law and needing then to suffer the consequences of that violation. The judge will still pronounce guilt, and you will still have to go and pay your penance, the jail, or wherever. So because nobody ever tell you where I just tell you, this hour and a half program, or maybe you had learned it by other means, the bottom line is that you are accountable to do for yourself what is needed to be done, because at the end of the day, self-preservation is the maxim of creation. You was created and given and endowed with the power and authority and ability to self-preserve. You have a responsibility to yourself as an entity, a living entity, to do what is necessary to preserve yourself, your health and well-being, and everything else that comes along with it, so that you can enjoy the best that you can out of the life that you have before you depart and, hopefully leave something behind as a contribution, whether in kind or whether in actions or words. Of course, mostly deeds, because, only your deeds will actually make a difference to those who live on. Belizeans at home and abroad, I'm coming to the end of the program tonight. All I could say, we have just passed through for the 4th anniversary of independence of our country, and our 220 something anniversary of independence from Spain, to which Spain never did return to contest our territory. But now we have a bunch of jackals neighbors who are trying to dispossess us of our patrimony and country of Belize. It is the right responsibility, and I hope that it will also be the desire and the intent of each Belizean, whether born or naturalized, to see to it that you learn as much as you can, develop the necessary skills and knowledge and fortitude that will be required of you in order for you to keep Belize safe and sound and out of the hands of your predator neighbors, because they have the wherewithal militarily to overrun you and conquer you, while at the same time they are hobnobbing with your leaders and giving your leaders the impression that they love your leaders more than they love themselves and or their own people and country. That is not true. And any leader that is not aware of that, or is cognizant of that, or is sensitized enough to that reality, and any leader who is willing to look you in the face and tell you, as Belizeans, contrary to our constitution, which says that we are entitled to go from north to south, east to west, any part of our country without any um, government authority in our country to stop us from doing so, much less any foreign country government to stop us from doing so in our own country. Any government officials that come to you and tell you that you are provoking your neighbor because your neighbor is stepping into your country and your territory and dispossessing you of it, and because you make any kind of qualms about it or noise or take the matter to the international court or to the UN, or you write about it, speak about it, or do anything about it, because your leaders are hobnobbing with these people and think that they can survive and enjoy their friendship with these people to your detriment. Any such leader is a traitor, has committed treason, and has no good intent towards you. Belizeans at home and abroad, this was the Belizean Affairs Show number 348. 348. It was my privilege to have sat here tonight and babble around, up and down, and in a circle in your ears, and hopefully that babbling would amount to something in terms of your sense of appreciation for what was intended, maybe not achieved, but at the same time, under the circumstances that we just finished celebrate our Independence Day, I hope your patriotism is at a high level. And I would just like to say thank you again for those who have listened to our program tonight and those who will be listening thereafter at your own convenience. Thank you for tuning in, listening in, and sharing and appreciating what we had to offer. God bless Belize and Belizeans at home and abroad. Good night.